Have you ever stopped to think about how the most dangerous people in the world aren't the ones who shout the loudest? They're the ones who say nothing. While you're here, consumed by the urge to respond, to defend yourself, to prove you're right, the world works completely differently. It works in silence, and no one wants to talk about it. Because silence is uncomfortable, silence is disturbing. But silence is pure power. Let me tell you a secret most people will never understand. When someone takes everything from you, your peace, your security, your dignity, with words, with insults, with betrayals, what do? We respond, we scream, we defend ourselves. And you know what happens? We give them exactly what they want. Because their power isn't in their words. It never was. Their power is in your reaction, in your response, in your anger confirming they've gotten to you. Think of a fire. It only grows if it has fuel. Fire depends on oxygen, on raw materials, on something to consume. But take away the oxygen, fire dies. It dies alone, without even knowing why. The people who hurt you are exactly like that. They need your reaction like fire needs oxygen. They want to see you writhing, apologizing, trying to justify yourself. Because while you do this, you are alive to them. You matter. But when you stay quiet, when you take away that oxygen, they disappear. Not because you ignored them, because to them, you ceased to exist. And that is precisely what terrifies them. Now, you might be thinking, isn't it weakness to simply let them win? Isn't it cowardly to remain silent while they destroy you? Yes, that's exactly what they want you to think. Because if you believe silence is weakness, you will continue to react. You will continue to give them power. You will continue to be predictable, controllable, easy. But let me show you a different perspective. There is an animal that lives alone, a wolf, and that wolf at some point was expelled from the pack. The world sees him as weak because he's alone, because he lost his pack, because he lost his protection. But while you saw him as weak, he was learning, hunting alone, surviving in temperatures that would kill most, developing skills the pack never needed to know. And you know what the end of this story is? When that wolf rejoins the pack, he's no longer the animal he was expelled from. He's something they can't even recognize, something they fear. That wolf, that solitude, that silence, it wasn't weakness, it was forging. You're in that stage now, in the fire, being molded. And the people who see you right now and call you weak, a loser, a surrendered, they're looking into the flames and confusing the heat of the transformation process with the fire of destruction. The silence you cultivate now isn't surrender, it's reconstruction. Let me simplify something for you because life works like a game of chess. Every reaction of yours is a piece you give away. Every word, every scream, every tear they manage to wring from you is a piece that leaves your side of the board. Showing anger, you lost a pawn. Showing despair, you lost your queen. And do you know why? Because you reacted. You moved. They made you dance to their tune. But the one who remains silent, the one who doesn't move, the one who observes, he's winning without doing anything. Because while you exhaust your pieces trying to attack, respond, defend yourself, he's preserving every move, every word, every reaction, saving everything for the moment that matters. And when that moment comes, when he finally moves, it's all at once. It's decisive. It's unstoppable. It's checkmate. Do you know what separates the people who truly change the world from those who just made noise? The difference is right there. Those who mattered didn't stop to explain themselves to those who didn't understand. They didn't waste their energy arguing with people who had already decided to hate them. They simply moved. They worked in silence. And when their actions were finally revealed, it was too late. Their enemies were already in check. Do you understand what I'm saying? Let me tell you why people really try to control you, because it's important for you to understand this. It's not because you're weak. It's not because you deserve to be controlled. It's because they're terrified, frightened by the lack of control over their own lives, desperate to maintain the illusion of power that keeps them upright at night. And then what do? They dump all of this on you, their fears, their insecurities, their flaws. Because if they can make you carry it, they don't have to. They're projecting.
And you become the mirror where they see their own demons. The question is, will you continue carrying their demons? Think of water. Water doesn't clash with the stones in its path. It doesn't yell at them. It doesn't try to convince them to get out of the way. It simply flows, around, over, under. It continues its course. And do you know what happens? Those same stones that tried to block the path? Water, after centuries, sculpts them, transforms them. It conquers without ever attacking. This is silence in action. Because silence isn't passivity, it isn't acceptance, it's an active choice not to waste your energy on battles you don't need to win to stay standing. Let them try to control you, let them yell. Meanwhile, you flow to where it really matters, to your goals, your growth, your peak. And when you get there, when you've built something they'll never achieve, then yes, they'll finally understand, but it will be too late. Now let me be honest with you. Why am I telling you this? It's not easy. It will test you in ways you can't even imagine. They will come at you with everything, more aggressive, more desperate, because when they realize you've stopped responding, that you've stopped dancing to their rhythm, they will intensify. They will try to force you out of silence. They will try to offend you more, lie more, hurt you deeper. Because for them, this is about validation. It's about knowing they can still affect you, that you still care enough to react. And in that moment, when silence seems most difficult, when you feel like you could explode at any second, that's when you're closest to winning. Because what they don't understand is that silence isn't indifference. Silence is control. It's you saying, you don't deserve a piece of me anymore. Not a word, not a look, not a reaction. Your silence isn't weakness before them. It's strength before yourself. It's the discipline of standing tall when everything inside you wants to crumble. It's you choosing to destroy yourself or rise above. And you know what the funny thing is? The more you cultivate this silence, the less it hurts, because you'll realize a devastating secret. They simply don't matter. They never mattered. You only believed they mattered because you allowed their opinion to affect you. But when you realize that their opinion is as valuable as the wind, that it passes through you but doesn't move you, that's when you're finally free. There's a difference most never discover, the difference between loneliness and solitude, and it will change everything for you. Loneliness is when you're begging for someone, anyone, anything to fill the void. It's desperation, it's weakness. It's you begging for them to understand, for them to come back, for them to care. Solitude is completely different. Solitude is when you finally realize you can fill your own voids, that your company is enough, that you don't need external validation because you've learned to build internal value. When you reach this point, when you can love yourself enough to be okay alone, they can no longer hurt you using isolation as a weapon, because you're no longer isolated, you're improving. You become that animal that learned to hunt alone. And here's the thing, the more you develop this ability to be okay with yourself, the more healthy people begin to appear, because healthy people respect those who respect themselves. They admire those who have inner peace. They gravitate toward the silence that conveys strength, not weakness. So your silence doesn't isolate you. In fact, it filters you. It removes the human trash and makes room for people who truly deserve to be around you. It's like building a castle. The high walls aren't there to trap you. They're there to keep out those who weren't invited. Let me tie this all together for you, because it needs to be crystal clear. Your life is like a movie you're directing, and throughout your life, other people have tried to take over. They've tried to tell you what the ending should be, what the path should be. Meanwhile, you've become a mere actor in a script you didn't write. But there's one thing no one can take from you without your permission: your silence. Your right not to respond, your power to turn the camera and start filming the story you want, the way you want it, with the ending you choose. And every time you choose to be quiet instead of screaming, you're saying, "This story is mine now." Every scar you carry, every time you fell and got up alone, every night you struggled internally only to wake up still breathing, that's not weakness, that's brute strength. It's unsung courage. It's the kind of power that doesn't need an audience to be real. And when they point
to your scars and try to use them to destroy you, you just smile. Why these scars? They terrify those who see them because they scream, "This one survived. This one went through shit and is still here, still standing, still building." They fear what you've become not because of any words you said, but because you said nothing, because you just kept going. And when you finally reach that peak, when you've built everything you imagined you could build, when you've become everything they said you'd never be, you'll look back not with hate, not with revenge, with indifference. Because then, yes, when indifference hits, when they realize you climbed and never once looked back, when they understand that their silence no longer reaches you because you're no longer there, then they'll understand what they've lost. But it will be just an echo on a mountain you've already climbed. Your silence, my friend, is not a strategy. It's a personal revolution. It's a promise you make to yourself that won't be broken, not by them, not by anyone. So when things get heavy, when silence feels too heavy to bear, remember one thing. Silence isn't absence, it's total presence. It's you choosing to be fully with yourself instead of dispersed in useless reactions. Because ultimately, when the dust settles, when the noise dissipates, when all the screams fade, what will remain is silence. And in it you will be standing, not alone, but complete, whole, free. Now I'm going to show you something few understand. Silence isn't just psychological, it's physical, it's chemical. When you react, when you scream, when you defend yourself, your body releases cortisol, adrenaline. Your nervous system goes into overdrive. You become inflamed. Literally. But when you are silent, when you can remain calm in the face of chaos, your body begins to heal. Your mind clears. You enter a state where you can truly think with precision, with strategy, with vision. While they're there burning with rage, you're evolving. You're rebuilding yourself cellularly. It's biology working in your favor. So when they see you after weeks of silence, and you look different, calmer, stronger, more centered, it's no coincidence. It's your body thanking you for stopping wasting energy reacting uselessly. Let me tell you what really happens in the minds of those who try to destroy you. When you stop reacting, when your mirror disappears, they have to confront the most terrifying reality, themselves. Without you as a reflection, they are left alone with their own actions, their own empty words, their own emptiness. And that's why your silence terrifies them so. Because mirrors don't lie, and when you become a mirror that no longer reflects anything they offer, when you become completely indifferent, they are forced to see the truth that they are small, insignificant, empty. And you know the cruel part of this? They know. On some deep level, they always knew. But while you reacted, while your pain confirmed their power, they managed to pretend they had something, that they were something. Your silence stripped away that illusion. And when the illusion crumbles, what's left is only their loneliness. And it's this loneliness that kills. Not slowly, swiftly, violently. So while you're at peace, building your life, they're disintegrating inside. And you don't even have to do anything. The universe takes care of it. Here's something most winners don't talk about. They didn't announce their victory before they achieved it. You don't see posts, announcements, or fiery speeches. You see silent action, consistent, day after day, without testifying, without validation. The seed doesn't announce that it will become a tree. It simply grows underground while no one sees. Months pass, a year, 2 years, and suddenly it bursts to the surface so strong it can crack concrete. This is how you need to operate. Don't tell your plans. Don't share your dreams with people who rejoice in your downfalls. Don't explain your strategy. Just execute. Because as soon as you talk about your intentions, you create competitors. You create people desperate to sabotage you before you even begin. You trigger envy. But when you work in silence, when you're already at the top and they only find out because you've already earned it, it's too late. Too late. They'll try to join in, try to grab a crumb, but you'll have already moved the mountain. Let me tell you something that will sound disturbing, but it's true. Not all silence is kindness. Not all warmth is peace. There is the silence of the predator. It's different. It's focused. It's dangerous.
There. It's when you stay quiet, not because you're weak, but because you're preparing. You don't respond because you already know what your next move will be. You don't defend yourself because you don't need to. Because when the time comes, you'll strike so precisely that they won't even know what hit them. This is the silence you need to develop now. Not the silence of the victim who suffers in silence, but the silence of the strategist, of the predator who observes, of the hunter who waits for the right moment. Because when you become like this, when you cultivate this kind of silence, people sense it. They sense something has changed. And suddenly, that thing that humiliated you, that person who brought you down, they start to get nervous around you. Because they feel the predator awakening. They feel the energetic shift. And although they don't know exactly what, they know they've lost control. And that is the victory no one can deny. Now there's something I need to tell you, because this isn't a fairy tale. When you embrace silence, when you decide to be whole within yourself, you lose some people. People you loved, people you believed would understand. They will leave, because they were used to the you who reacted, who defended yourself, who sought approval. This new you, the one who doesn't explain, who doesn't justify, who walks alone, it scares them. So it will hurt. Yes, it will. Because loneliness is real. Because losing people is real. Because when you choose to love yourself first, some people take it as personal rejection. But here's the brutal truth. If their presence required you to be small, to constantly explain yourself, to sacrifice your peace, then that presence was a luxury you could no longer afford. Healthy people don't leave. People who need you to be small are the ones who leave. And when they leave, you can finally breathe. It's sad at first, but it's liberating in the end. There's a virtue no one wants to talk about: patience. Because patience isn't glamorous. Patience doesn't generate views. Patience doesn't sell emotional stories. But patience is everything. The man who conquered the world didn't do it in a day. It wasn't in a month. It took years of patience, of waiting, of work that no one saw, of progress that no one celebrated. And do you know what keeps this patience alive? Silence. Because you're not shouting about your progress, you're not validating your journey through the reactions of others, you're able to work, knowing no one is watching. This is rare, very rare, because most people need an audience.
They need confirmation. They need to be told they're on the right path. But you can walk knowing you're right, simply because you know it internally, because you trust yourself. And when this patience finally bears fruit, when everything you've worked for in silence manifests, it won't be a surprise to you. It will be inevitable, predictable even, because you always knew it would happen. You just didn't need others to confirm it. Let me show you a different perspective on time. The people you fear now, who hurt you now, who seem so powerful now, they will die. They will grow old. Your criticisms will turn to dust. But the legacy you build in silence, that will endure. The child you inspire with your actions, the product you create, the knowledge you disseminate, the life you touch without ever needing applause, that is immortal. And when you truly understand this, when you truly let it sink in, you realize that their opinion is literally irrelevant because they're worried about next week, and you are building for centuries to come. It's a war of different scales. They play chess. You are playing a dimension beyond that. So let them speak, let them judge, let them criticize. You are building in a dimension where they can't even see.
Here's something few people discover on their own. Your silence isn't just defense, it's an educational offering. When you are quiet, you listen. And when you truly listen, without rehearsing your response, without defending your point, you learn things that transform your life. Because most people spend their entire lives talking. They talk so much nonsense that they never have the mental space to absorb real knowledge. They've already decided they know. They already have the answers. But you, who have learned to be quiet, are opening yourself to the knowledge that was there all along. And do you know the competitive advantage of this? You become smarter while they lag behind. You evolve while they repeat the same mistakes. You learn the systems while they keep shouting about justice. So their silence isn't just a defensive strategy. It's also an offensive learning tool. Education through observation. Time is everything, and time is what silence gives you. When you stop reacting automatically, you gain time. Time to breathe, time to think, time to choose your response instead of being a response. Most people are always reactive, always responding, always chasing after what they said yesterday. But you can choose to be 3 steps ahead, because you're not there explaining the past. You're there building the future. And that difference, that small difference of being proactive instead of reactive, is literally what separates the winners from the losers. Those who matter choose their time. They decide when to speak, when to act, when to reveal, when to attack. And when you master this power, when you understand that time isn't a limited resource that you should waste responding to every provocation, you gain a whole life while others waste theirs. It's that simple. I'll tell you something that's hard to admit. Maybe external silence isn't even half the battle. The real war is internal. It's that scream inside you that wants to explode, that wants to justify itself, that wants them to understand, that wants them to see your pain and care. That voice, that's the real enemy. Because as long as you're listening to that voice, you're losing. Because it keeps you small, trapped, grounded in the past. But when you learn to silence that voice too, when you can be quiet not only externally but internally, that's when true transformation begins.
Because then you're not just ignoring them. You're ignoring the part of you that still wants them to care. And when you kill that part, when you can be whole without their validation, internal or external, you become invulnerable. Not because you've become too strong, but because you realized the enemy was inside you all along. Let me tell you a secret that success whispers.
When you start winning, when your results start talking, the people who humiliated you, they'll try to get closer. They'll pretend they always believed in you. They'll want a piece of your victory. And then comes the real test. Because you can simply accept them back. Let them bleed your success to fill their voids. Give them the validation they so desperately sought through you. Or you can do something more powerful. You can look at them without anger, without resentment, simply with clarity and say, no, with your silence. Not with your distance, not with your indifference. Because when you refuse to revisit history with someone who tried to destroy you, when you don't allow them to reposition themselves as a supporter, you're saying, you don't deserve to be in this part of my life. And more importantly, you demonstrate that you don't need them in either your failure or your success. That's power they'll never regain. Here's the most beautiful thing about actions. They speak a language that transcends words. They cannot be distorted, altered, or reinterpreted. When you rise, when you prosper, when you become what they said you would never be, that is a sentence no words can contradict. That's why your silence combined with action is so devastating. Not you shouting that you're going to win, you winning while remaining silent. Not you promising you'll change, you changing while no one was looking. Not you trying to prove yourself worthy, you being worthy so clearly you don't even need proof. This is the language that matters. This is the language of silence and action. And when this language begins to flow within you, when your actions speak so loudly that the silence becomes impossible to ignore, people will realize something fundamental. They lost. But you were already winning a long time ago. Let me be real with you about a side most people don't talk about. Embracing silence comes at a price. Not just psychological, but physical, emotional, existential. Because you will be alone many times. There will be nights where the weight of it all will seem unbearable. There will be moments where you will question if you were right, if all of this was worth it. And on those nights, when you're at your limit, I need you to remember one thing. The price you're paying right now, it's the rent of freedom. Because freedom isn't free. It costs. It costs the opinions of others. It costs the comfort of approval. It costs the control others try to exert over you. But when you finally pay that share, when you finally come out the other side of this test, you will be free in a way most will never experience. And that price, that glory, worth every second of pain. Now, I want you to see something you may not have seen yet. You were hurt, betrayed, humiliated. It's okay. This is real. And the natural reaction would be to repeat the cycle. You would hurt the one who was hurt. You would betray the one who betrayed you. You would humiliate the one who humiliated you. That's what most people do. But you will break this cycle in a much more powerful way. By choosing silence, by choosing not to react with the same currency they used on you, you're saying, this cycle ends with me. And you know what's most revolutionary about that? That it's not resignation, it's not weakness, it's raw power. Because breaking a cycle of violence requires more strength than continuing in it. It requires you to be greater than your wounds. And you are. So when you walk differently, because you learned not to remain in destructive patterns, when you were the first person in that family, in that circle, in that lineage to say no, that is inheritance. That is legacy. You didn't just save yourself. You opened the door for others to save themselves too. There is something I need you to understand deeply. Your silence is not just for you.
It resonates through time and space in ways you can't even imagine right now. When you choose to be strong when weakness would be easier, when you choose to be silent when shouting would be more satisfying, you are being a living example. You're being a beacon for someone in a future you will never know. Because somewhere, someone will see you. It may not be now, it may be in 10 years, but someone will see your strength, your silence, your quiet power, and will ask themselves, how did he do it? And through that question, they will find their way too. This is the silent call. It is the influence that requires no audience. It's the kind of leadership that doesn't require you to announce that you're a leader. You simply walk and leave footprints that guide others. Coming back to what I said at the beginning, have you ever stopped to think about how the most dangerous people in the world aren't the ones who shout the loudest? Now you know why. Because dangerous people, truly dangerous people, don't need to announce that they're coming. They don't need validation from the entire world. They don't waste energy explaining themselves. They simply are. They simply do. They simply conquer. And you can be like that too. Not in a malevolent way, but so completely focused on your purpose, so absolutely dedicated to your vision, that you become practically unstoppable. Because when the universe sees someone who truly can't be moved, who can't be controlled, who can't be broken, it opens doors. Opportunities appear. The right people arrive. Resources flow. Not because you asked for it, but because you sent a signal that can't be ignored. And that sign is your silence in action. And now, we've arrived here. It's not the end, because the end would suggest there's a point where you stop growing, where you stop evolving, where you stop becoming. But there is no end. There's only the next chapter, which you will write silently, day after day, through actions no one sees now, but that will echo forever. So let me say goodbye to you in a way that matters. Not with the words you'll remember, but with the silence you'll carry. When it starts to get difficult, remember that you've survived worse. When the silence feels like too much, remember that it's just the rebuilding happening. When people try to bring you back to the noise, the drama, the reactivity, remember that you've evolved beyond that. You become the wolf